now everyone's terrified of Chinese balloons flying over America. And again, this is the message of President Zelensky. Let's stop being afraid.
Some kind of wall between civilization and absolute evil.
And that's the question. Is Washington willing for Ukraine to win decisively?
We are really bodyguard for all Europe.
Welcome to TVP World. Welcome to Michal Rachon. And to talk about the current situation is Michal Poperechnyuk with us. He's an entrepreneur. He's a guy who is working hard for the Ukrainian cause in Europe. He is also a former kickboxing champion.
I'm from Nikopol. This is a city opposite to the biggest nuclear power plant which Russians occupied in March. So my city under rockets and missiles more than 7 months, and I understand what kind of strategy and actions Russians do.
Russians are losing many people, many troops, but they do not really care as far as I'm concerned. So does it change anything that they lose 1,000 people daily?
Yes, this is their advantages, because they don't appreciate and don't save their people. And the Putin's regime, they can send hundreds of thousands people for death, and they do it from day by day. And we try to save our soldiers, our patriots, and that's why it's pretty unfair battle. But with European and our partners' weapon, we can stand longer, and we are stronger with it. And I had my Euro trip through Germany, through France. I met different politicians, think tanks, and I tried to make promotion campaign to still support Ukraine, because it's very important. Because Russians also have another front, informational front, diplomatic front. They try to stop any kind of help and support for Ukrainians. So that's why we have to still continue unite all Europe.
So what do you take away from the situations like the one we saw in the British media when Piers Morgan invited a Russian, let's call him just a Russian person, and when he was confronted with the simple sentence that Ukrainians do not want to be a part of Russia, he started screaming, "No, no, no, no." What do you make of it?
I saw the small episode. Yeah, it's a funny way. We are optimistic, because you can see that Ukrainians don't ask fight for us. We just ask for bullets and weapons. And we are really bodyguard for all Europe. With some kind of wall between civilization and absolute evil. Putin's regime tried to repeat all Hitler's actions. And if Ukraine fallen down, he will go next to Poland, to Baltic countries, and next to all Europe, to France, Germany, etc. That's why European society, helping Ukraine, you invest to global security, European security. That's why it's so important. And if somebody is screaming and trying to stop, it's ridiculous.
And as usually on Monday, we got Joe Lindsley, who is in Ukraine since March 2020. Nice to have you again, Joe, on our program. Joe, I've heard something scary in a way. I was visiting one of the Twitter spaces yesterday, and I saw a guy who is quite famous in the world. He's Kim.com, that's the name he uses. He's basically spreading Russian propaganda all over the internet, but with 1.5 million followers, he's getting his voice. He's an internet personality, and I've heard something, well, scary in a way. This is a guy who is based in the Western culture, in the modern Western culture, and he is spreading this propaganda in a following manner. 500 troops over Ukrainian-Russian border. Ukraine is doomed. There is no use supporting Ukraine right now because this war is lost. And UFO cases are just used here for distracting the public opinion from this obvious fact? I mean, it's like a madness, but this is the kind of the messages that are distributed all over the infosphere right now. What's your assessment of this?
Well, Michal, good to see you. Hello from Kharkiv, a city where I've been for a couple of weeks now, and almost every other day we have several Russian missiles that hit the city. In response to some of those who I think don't really understand what's at stake here, there were two images that I saw in the past 2 or 3 days that really stick in my mind. One of them is, and they're both from around Bakhmut. In the city of Bakhmut, there were medics who I know who were going to evacuate, or I'm sorry, were going to take care of people who had been wounded by a Russian missile strike. And as this team of Americans and Ukrainians went to attend to the casualties, a Russian rocket hit their medical evacuation van. And by all accounts, I mean, it was a direct hit, a direct target. And there was a CCTV nearby, and someone took a still image, and you can see the Russian rocket a split second before it hit the medical evacuation van, and you can see the face of Dr. Peter Robinson Reed, the American Marine veteran and doctor who less than a second later was killed by that rocket. And so you can, in that still frame, you can see and feel the image of evil. And then the second image, Michal, that I saw is from the Wagner Group, and on one of their Telegram channels, they released a video that I don't want anyone to watch. It's absolutely terrible, but you can see a screenshot of a former Russian prisoner who was fighting with Wagner, and then he said, "I don't want to kill innocent Ukrainians anymore," and so Wagner said they had to execute him. And along a concrete wall, they attached a block, and they taped his head to the block, and then all you can see is someone coming up behind him with a sledgehammer, and they were about to execute him. And just, I mean, it is awful and terrifying and evil, and the fact that Russia's most elite forces think that this is the type of information that they want to share with the world shows us two things. A, they are completely barbaric with no moral boundaries whatsoever. And two, they think that fear can win. They think that they can simply make the rest of the world afraid because their evil has no bounds. And I think this is the thing to remember when it comes to supporting Ukraine, that if Russia gets any little victory here, if they get any territory, someone with no moral boundaries like that will keep going. And we should learn this from history. And I think this is what last week in President Zelenskiy's speech in London, this is what he made so powerfully clear, is that it's a new vision of, I think, of global security. You know, I think a lot of people in Washington have accepted, and in Brussels, you know, think that we have to manage tyrants. We have to live in a world with Russia. It's almost like this idea that we have these global training wheels, like Moscow training wheels, and we're afraid to take them off. And President Zelenskiy very confidently and powerfully said in London, no, we can band together and stand with confidence against this evil and not be afraid. And I think that's really secretly, I think, behind the scenes in the Pentagon, in the White House, in Brussels, and other capitals, the behind the scenes argument is, are we afraid of this tyranny, or are we going to face it boldly and strongly together? As I said, I've been here in Kharkiv. It's pretty scary pretty often. In fact, lately, in the past week, there have been several times when Russian missiles have hit this city before the air alarm can even sound. So even when there's no alarm, you have no guarantee of peace and safety. And people, I mean, you talk with people throughout Ukraine, and especially here, people are tired. I speak with soldiers and volunteers and regular civilians, Ukrainians and foreigners. People are tired. They often get scared. But the one thing that it's kind of a standard procedure here, when people get nervous and tired, you talk with each other and you buck each other up. And that's exactly what President Zelenskiy was saying in that amazing speech in the Palace of Westminster. He said, we know freedom will win. We know Russia will lose. And we will really know that victory will change the world. And this will be a change that the world has long needed. And I think therein is the key idea. This is not like absent-minded beauty pageant, let's have world peace type of talk. It's saying really what we're seeing, I think, is Ukraine's Revolution of Dignity, 2014. The people took control peacefully of their country from the corrupt elites. And now that's why Russia has invaded. But now we're seeing a Maidan mentality in global foreign policy. And that's what Zelenskiy's speech represented. Ukrainians are saying in their own country, they stood up to the corrupt elites. And now together, the world with Ukraine can do the same thing.
Joe, you are close to the front line, basically, because when we read the reports, we know that parts of the Kharkiv Oblast are under Russian control, parts of them are under constant threat. The Kharkiv itself is under rocket fire, as you just mentioned. I wonder, what is your assessment and what comes out of the talks when you talk to the military men and other people who know what is going on over there, regarding the numbers that are reported, the number of Russian casualties. We hear about 1,000 troops daily killed in this battle of Vuhledar, and we've read some reports from Girkin, for example, which may be treated or should be treated as a deception in a way, but he claims that this offensive will have the same effect that the previous offensive had, and basically this is what many of the Western analysts say. What's your take?
When it comes to numbers of casualties, I never like to quote it, especially from Russia. I don't believe, everything is propaganda. And so a lot of it is a mind game. But even on the Ukrainian side, and unfortunately, anecdotally, the losses in Bakhmut are terrible. It's awful. Everyone here knows someone affected by it. But at the same time, there was a BBC headline a couple of days ago saying Ukraine is losing, slowly but surely was the headline. And it was a terrible headline because the fact that we're even talking about Bakhmut means that Russia is on its heels. Russia came into this full-scale invasion wanting to take Kyiv and Dnipro and Odessa. And now, we're talking about a small city where no one lives anymore because it's been destroyed. And so even though it's a horrible and difficult battles, it is a sign of Russia's weakness. And I think the biggest thing that I hear that Ukraine needs is ammunition and stronger air defense.
My final question, Joe. We are ahead of the visit of President of the United States, Joe Biden, in Poland. He's going to be in Poland around the date of the first year of this war, of this attack. I wonder, what is your assessment of his policies? If you ask me a question about Biden and his policy towards Russia 1.5 years ago, I wouldn't bet a dime on him. But after this year, I must admit that he surprised me in a way with the clear vision that he is going and his administration is going to support Ukraine against Russia. Maybe it's not as much as we would like to, but he's holding the line. What's your take?
Well, I would say when you listen to President Zelenskyy's speech in London, those are the clear words of a statesman who knows what's at stake. And sometimes we hear words kind of like that from Boris Johnson, certainly from Polish leaders, from Baltic leaders. You never hear clear speech like that even from Washington, even today. And behind the scenes, I think that a lot of people in Washington are a little bit afraid of this idea of what a victory for Ukraine means, and they're afraid of Russia or they think we need Russia, as Henry Kissinger has said, in our global equilibrium. So I do have some concern about that. But when President Biden comes to Poland, I think anytime the closer you get to this, maybe the more deeply you can feel both the threat, but then also the potential of success. And to have that energy, I think maybe could help to shift this a little bit. But I do think. All right, in Ukrainian, the word for air alarm, trevoha, it means anxiety, and there's this. The whole world has this anxiety. In America, now everyone's terrified of Chinese balloons flying over America. And again, this is the message of President Zelensky. Let's stop being afraid. Let's band together. But that means we really need to give Ukraine everything they need to win quickly. And that's the question. Is Washington willing for Ukraine to win decisively, or are they timid? And I think that's a question that needs to be answered, especially when President Biden comes to Poland.
So Lindsley, world's most interesting man.
This I find in my garden. It's piece from rocket.
Thank you for introducing Ukraine on your social media pages.
Что он сказал?